Welcome to DataOps. And today we will see a case study of one of our first clients as a private cloud infrastructure hosted on OVH. Which means that what is interesting in there is that it's a LAMP stack, classical LAMP stack, but on a private cloud and with fixed cost. Because it's all based on OVH, the routing is based on GeoDNS, and so we manage exactly the same capabilities as you get from Google Cloud or from Amazon, Alibaba, all those kind of clouds, but for fixed cost. So if we look at the Mixer case, so Mixer is the website we're gonna look. The stack, we're gonna see the old stack, the old school LAMP stack, the new stack that we have proposed to the clients, and how we do GeoDNS, how we do Docker orchestration, how we do deploy the services, and how we replace the storage solution. And then we will have a deeper focus inside the MariaDB high availability systems and proxying and, well, the database part, I would say. I don't know if I used to work for MySQL and MariaDB. I was one of the old guys of that stack, so I was working at the professional services, so I saw a lot of database infrastructure at Facebook, at big players. So I try to bring this practice to everybody with the tools we do. So what was the stack when the clients contact us? It was based on VMware, OS6 servers, a single data center in Paris, and it was Nginx, which is not bad. Most of the time it's Apache, but already they have this good Nginx. 2 MariaDB databases, so also that was good. It's not like MySQL 4 or whatever. It's pretty new. NFS to store their statics content, and a database replication, but that only was used as a backup solution. So it was manual failover and everything, old style. And in front of the HTTP servers, they were putting some Asha proxy just in front for load balancing the web traffic. So who is in the room? Who is using Nginx? Yes. Who is using VMware? Nobody. Good. Who is using MariaDB? Yeah. And Procona? Two? And MySQL? Oh, yeah, great. All stuff. Great. Galera? No Galera. Okay, great. Okay, so who is using WordPress? Oh, as well. Oh, okay, great. That's why you're here. Okay, so here this client has a big issue. He has chosen to do dynamic website out of WordPress. It's not a bad idea, but it's not for that. WordPress is really static content. And the idea is that it's geolocalization of a meetup. So basically, it's a meetup competitor, but driven by women, which means it's the woman power in US and everything. So the woman wants to have their group and only accept the people they accept in their group, and they organize weekly events or things like this. So the whole idea was to have something that is geolocalized. So if we use Mixer right now, you can see you will be in Barcelona and you will see all the events around, and then you have to, or the event is public or it's a private event, and then you have to register to the system. So it's very dynamic because it's a lot of searches. The cache cannot really be used because it's changing quite a lot, so quite complex. So they did that customization using WordPress plugins interfaces, and WordPress use a lot of transients. So it means that The transient is a kind of store for the plugins, so that the content that you put there will be accessible to another to another session. The problem with the transient is by default on WordPress, they store the content of the data that you put there inside the database. So it's a lot of access to the database. For if you have 10 plugins or whatever, they will all go to the transient database and do a lot of things. The WordPress is also has this problem is that it's a very generic database system. It will store objects as very normalized as an object table and the attributes of the objects, so that you can store every type of objects inside the same store. And because of that, it makes the queries super complex with a lot of joins and things like this. Also, every plugin has a metadata key value called the WP options. And when the people use WordPress, they add plugins, and then this table is fetched at every page, so it's a mess. So what was wrong with these clients? First, he called us because his response time from US, which is only opened the service in US, and it was stored in Paris, it took 10 seconds to load one page. And he asked the hosting company, what can I do? And they say, well, yes. So it was not good. And the reason, after a small analysis, was that everything was wrongly designed. Each page were generating 2 kilos queries, each WordPress page, 2 kilo queries per page. On the database layer. Yes. WordPress. Remember this WP options table. Every plugin, every time you're in the header of the WordPress PHP, you load the WP options. And the WP options, that's why I say plugins don't use JSON as a database. They are using this table as a JSON store to store their own stuff. So in one big, and this is loaded at every page, and so sometimes you have 1 gigabyte object there representing the post and the link to the post of WordPress, which is a pure nightmare. So every time you load, you see this big transfer of data from the database to the WordPress front, and that's a nightmare. So it's computing megabytes transfer for every time you just load the header. So it's bad. Then digging a little bit, you see that there's bad caching policy. They were not using plugins like how do you call this plugin, which can do caching everywhere on WordPress. It's very Total Cache. Yes, thank you. They were not using it at all. Already you can have like opcode cache, a lot of things that even if the content is dynamic, can help you to scale. No CDN, so yeah. And NFS as well was a bad idea to store things on NFS, because then there's a real hard limit on the number of open files that you can do per second and things like this. So it's also a SPOF. So when your NAS is down, what do you do? Nothing. So we try to help them. Also, one other big problem after the analysis, we found out that there were too many external API calls. Because of the developer says to the boss, oh, but now it's we need to use REST API, external API, because all is designed like this, and so they abuse this too much. For example, we found out that sometimes Google Analytics could take 2 seconds to answer. We found out that the plugin they were using for geolocalization could answer in 10 seconds because it was stored on Amazon web servers. And sometimes Amazon is gone. And of course, this was all synchronous. So when it doesn't work, you pay the price. Facebook single sign-on, sometimes 2 seconds to just print the log via Facebook. So crazy things like this. And also then they have made their own internal REST API one for the completion. When you type something, a city or a country, then it will auto-complete. This is one API, then this is the geolocalization API, so they also scan all Wikipedia. So if you type one word, you can have like a suggester. Okay, this word also means that, so that we can search the good mixer. So that's a good idea, but then you're also doubling the risk if this doesn't work. There's no easy way to type just a word. So when it's done, the whole site is done. Well, some features of the site are done, so things like this. So what we did is now we moved to a new type of architecture. This type of architecture is based on a GeoDNS system. So we are using Russian company, what's the Zilor, which gives you like a, they have DNS everywhere. So it's like Route 53 of Amazon, if you know it. But that's controlled by us. It costs like $550 per year for 8 domain names. So I would say it's cheap. And then they provide us this IP there on the top, which is the main IP of their data center, but it's a GeoDNS IP. So if you come from US, you'll get directly routed to the US data center. If you come from France or Europe, you will get probably here. And from US West, you'll get to Canada. So in each of those data center, we use the OVH to rent some servers at a fixed cost, and they are the servers of the clients. On top of that, we have put our own stack, which is called OpenSVC. It's like Kubernetes, but I would say more simple. You deploy container resources and everything, and it's more simple. So OpenSVC has a proxy, which is an Envoy proxy, the same as Kubernetes, which use gRPC to route the traffic. That's good, we will see why. And based on that, we have deployed a stack that looks like this. Web servers, and then each web server talks to his own proxy, and his own proxy will read-write split the queries to his own slave databases. So that, okay, we do a lot of queries, let's get them from memory on the local machine. We will not pay the network price and the latency of doing 2,000 queries per page. Of course, there is 2 candidate databases, which are the master, where the writes take place, and they are isolated, and we know which one they are. One is in Canada, one is in US, and we will see this type of stack. How does it work? Okay, OM monitor. So OM is orchestrator manager from OpenSVC product. So you install OpenSVC in all your nodes, and you'll get an OpenSVC cluster. What is an OpenSVC cluster? It's basically an agent that is running with all those services. So it's a outbit system. Outbit system because the nodes will talk to all together and exchange information on the service. So here is the nodes. Mixer Canada 1, Canada 2, France 1, France 2, US 1, US 2, and this is my nodes. They are in the middle because sometimes I tend to give some development servers or some things to the clients, so for him to play with. Each node is rated with, you can see the CPU load, the amount of memory swap and everything. You see here, swap, memory, load 15 minutes, so you get the scores. Of course, I deploy some database, so I use the maximum of memory, so I don't let many things to do. The outbit is super powerful in OpenSVC. It's nothing compared with Kubernetes. You can have disk heartbeat on a SAN. You can have like a key value store heartbeat on Amazon or whatever. You can have relay here. I'm using the OpenSVC company as a relay for my heartbeats because they also have some servers around. So at the end, the heartbeat can be exchanged from many routes. There is TCP, UDP escalation, a lot of things like this. Okay, there is an internal DNS service. So that's all coming when you deploy OpenSVC cluster. Install the agent, join, get the key of the cluster, join the other nodes, and then it's done. But you still have to do some little pre-work before starting deploying. What is this pre-work? It's the network. You have different servers on OVH. They basically, people would tell you use VRAC, but it's wrong. It's a marketing bullshit. VRAC doesn't work between US and Europe, for example. So, okay, you can use VRAC, but don't. So, because it's an orchestration also, it's not enough to have like it would force you on OVH to have a lot of public IP range, which costs. So, okay, the orchestrator of an SVC will manage to make a virtual network for you, like Kubernetes. And this is what you can see on the top, OM net status. You'll see all the VLAN that is defined in the cluster. So we have this one mixer net, which is routed bridge network. It's mean IP inside IP. So that's a CNI plugin developed by the OpenSVC guys that use the layer 3 Linux to encapsulate IP inside IP, and you get something very strong, layer 3. You cannot find more faster than this. Then you also, for example, we used for our demonstration Repman, which is another cluster, the name of another cluster. It will allocate this in this pool of IP. This is WeaveNet. WeaveNet, nobody knows WeaveNet? Yeah, so WeaveNet, don't please. It's good, huh? But you have to pay maybe to see if it's good. What happens to me, WeaveNet has corrupted sometimes, lot of times. So I lost confidence. I didn't want to go Calico or other VLAN plugins because Calico is a central point of management. Well, it's possible for big cluster. I know Amazon use it, Google Cloud as well. This is their preferred VLAN solution, but well. Anyway, OpenSVC use any type of CNI plugin. So you can use whatever you want to plant some IP into the system. And then you also define some pool, storage pool. So storage pool is because I don't want to redefine all the time file systems and everything. You just create the pool, and then the services could take some disk space into those pools. Here you see that the tank is my name of my pool. Tank is a ZPool, ZFS pool, 700 gig, and the default, which is will put the services into a directory, the OpenSVC agent directory. That is less good because when you unprovision, it will keep the file there. When unprovisioned on a real pool, he moved the disk. So you can also define a loop device, whatever you want, if you want to remove as well the data and stay on the same server without defining complex disk architecture, partitioning. But what is good with OpenSVC, you have more choice than on Kubernetes. You can use DRBD, SAN with multipath, so all type of SAN arrays, big expensive array are supported with multipath. NFS, there's so many, you can have a look, the list of technology there is impressive. Once I have my pool, once I have my network to provision the services, I need also some secrets, like the certificates or everything like this. So in the old architecture, you have to go on all your web server, change the certificate, blah, blah, blah. That's awful. Here, OpenSVC gives you a secret. So here, that's the service name. You have this part is what we call the namespace. So for example, we have for every developer has his own namespace with his own web server and development databases and everything. And the pre-production also. And well, other type of services. So you have to have one certificate per, even if it's the same, one certificate per namespace, because the namespace will not share certificate. So you create your certificate like this. So this is a key value store, and this key value store is pushed to Envoy, and then the Envoy proxy use the certificate for the namespace. And what is good with that is if you change the the certificate, all the service that consume the certificate will be changed at the same time in real time, in gRPC mode. You can expose the content of the key value. So key value for a certificate is what makes a key. So you have like a public key and a private chain. You give that, and it's encrypted in the system by OpenSVC, so that's good security. And then you can expose to the containers. You can expose the certificate by this trick. You create a volume in the service file, and then you will expose the content of the certificate as a file with SHM. So then you can also use, I will show later on how to extract and provide a file to a container based on something secret. At the end, you end up like with the command ommixer svc mon. You will see all the services running on the cluster based on where they are installed on the nodes. So when you have like you have two different types of services. Some are failover. For example, GitLab. I don't want to put a cluster of GitLab. Just one is good, and then it fell over in Canada if it's not possible to have it in US, things like this. So if we look at what we have here, so that's the production mixer namespace. The services, so you have like one database per front, one slave per front or per server. You have a Blackfire is something to debug PHP code to make a stack. That's a debugging solution. You have some cron servers. You have some, of course, you have the proxy in every data center that do failover. You have image servers which use mini IO. So it's Amazon compatible key value, and we mount, because WordPress sometimes has some plugin that needs file system, so we mount this with another solution. Then you have Replication Manager, which is our system to manage failover of the databases. We provide it. It's called Replication Manager is a tool we create, open source. And you have the web stack, so one web stack in US, one web stack in Canada, one web stack in France. And here you can see the number of servers. Minimum it scales to 2 servers out of 2, 1 out of 1. Well, you can, if you have more nodes in US, but the client is not rich, so we use all. But here it could be 1 out of 2 because they have 2 servers in France and 2 servers in Canada, but anyway. Different namespace. Each developer, as I say, has his own database for the dev, own database for the pre-production, and you can see where they run. Okay, let's see a more specific command. What is inside the service? Inside the service, service is a configuration file that is shared against the cluster. We have created, for example, this is the WWUS service, so the web service. It's not only one PHP FMP Nginx server. It's a Google Docker images, a Google POS, which means it's holding the network, the namespace. So this, when I prompt my CNI 10.48.48.10, is the IP that the CNI will, the orchestrator will give. It will be plumbed into this Google POS container. And then all the others share the same namespace. So they talk locally each other. And then we have a memcache server, we have like so the PHP, we have adminer, well, that's not very used. Nginx Prometheus exporter to export the statistic. And of course, the Prometheus PHP FMP exporter, well, everything for the monitoring. And then we have some exposing port 80 will go internally to port 443. Port 443 will go to port 80. That's for HTTPS redirect. This is a CDN, so it's a virtual host for serving statics, etc., etc. So you can see here, it's this virtual host will answer us.mixer.net, w.mixer.net. This vhost3, which is attached to the expose 3, will serve cdn.us.mixer.net for the statics.
And you use the load balancer? So I see the
Envoy use the load balancing directly natively because it's a flex service. You will have a native load balancing. But what is customized here, I will show you in the service later on, it's use, how we call it, affinity, a session affinity. So it's a hash policy with session affinity, which means that it will, for me, I will come to the same web server unless this server die. How does it look like? So I show you here, so previously it was a service that for the web, now a service for a database. And here I'm showing you the configuration file, the OpenSVC configuration file. So a database is runs on a node, preferably, because I don't want to, here it's not a flex. And the nodes is defined here in an environment part where it's key value. So you can use all those keys inside the service. So here it means that this server will run on mixer.fr.1 node. It's flex, but basically only on the first node. So because I have only one, it goes always on the same. So that means that there's no HA policy managed by OpenSVC, so no failover of HA. Docker information and everything. So the IP, so easy to declare. It's my pod 1, that's optional. It's a CNI IP. It uses the network mixer.net that we have defined before. There is a task. So this task is triggered every minute, and it will trigger that script. That's for backups, things like this. This task is only running when the service, the file system is up, things like this. And we have system parts. So for MariaDB or MySQL, it's good to have to split your file system. So here, for example, we use ZFS because we could have snapshots, we could have a lot of things, very easy, resizing. So the first file system we create is for the Docker, because here I say Docker is private. I don't know where, but yeah. Docker daemon private false. Okay, so this part will not be used. But if it is true, it will use this file system to store the Docker images and everything, so that when you get rid of the service, you will also get rid of all the Docker parts. And OpenSVC will launch Dockerd just for that service. Okay? So the one here is not used because Docker private is false. But after that, we have like a ZFS with compression on. The block size is 60 kilo as InnoDB requires. Mount point legacy means that the file system will be managed by OpenSVC and not by the system when it restarts, for example. Standby true, well. Okay, it means that if I crash, for example, if a Docker image doesn't start, I don't want the file system to go down. I want it to stay up, just to debug and see what's happening in the log or whatever. So that you can say, depending on your policy, you can choose. Another file system with for the redo log and the bin logs. Here, a more classical 4 kilos block size and a TMP file system for the temporary tables. Okay. Then the containers. Here you have an interesting part. I will show you. Init container. Replication manager are tools that we provide as open source. Is able to define configuration very easily by drag and drop tags and few parameters like the memory you want for your database and everything. And what happened is that this container will ask replication manager, give me the configuration. download the tar.gz, enter the configuration, and then, because it's detached equals fast, the init container will be dropped by the service, and will let you the file system. And then the file system is used with volume, here, volume mounts. And so the configuration is mounted, the data directory is mounted, already preset with some subdirectory and things like this, and some init script as well. And well, this one is for local time to get the hypervisor time inside the container. Okay. So pretty advanced setup. Then, if we go down to the web, we go back to the WWUS. I'm going to the routing part where we will see how the proxy is managed and how the routes are managed inside the cluster. Define my certificate for this web server, web service. So it's secret. It's a type TLS, so that you don't really care. For expose 1, we do load balancing policy ring hash. So that's the thing that is doing consistent hashing against all the web server. Another expose, so it's this one listen to port 80 and route inside port 443, and that's for what I was saying is for HTTPS redirect. Okay, now you can see the expose 3 is to serve cdn.us.mixer.net, which serves the static. It's a virtual host inside the PHP container. What else interesting here? Session host affinity, cookie TTL equals 0. That's the way you define in Envoy to keep going to the same HTTP server if you have the same session. So you will put a cookie to manage this in your session. Whoops, sorry. Okay, let's go. Who are the mixer around me? That was before. So before, a lot of join to the system table, and here you have custom joins, so you don't really know what the developer are doing there, but probably another 100 joins, something crazy. Then custom wares, blah, 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 something horrible. Okay, what we did is we created. Okay, we decided first that the geolocalization was our most discriminant factor. We can filter a lot with only the GPS position. So it will be our main factor of selection, of indexing. So what we do is we increase the distance, we create a circle, a ring, and we increase the distance until we found some event that match the search. And what we did for that is creating a single table. I will talk about this table later. But basically, it happens like this. Give me all the get geolocalized post, give the latitude and the distance, and the maximum distance. But he will start with a small distance and increase the distance until he found enough mixers to send back to this query. What is good here, I cut the from, sorry, from geofilter. So we create this table geofilter, which is a denormalization of all the WordPress schema. So if you go into that geofilter table, you will have all the attributes of one post. And the way it's stored, we have the coordinate, which is a point of the event. And it is indexed with a special GIS index, so geographical index. And we also have, so for example, CI, means interest center. So that's all the keywords about the mixer. So this mixer is about, I don't know, traveling or whatever. It's in Paris, so you have a list of keywords and a list of attending as well, which also is type of full text indexing. So we have this ID means Paris. This one means baby-foot or game or football. We don't really care. So that's the way we do it. Then we use GIS function like mbr contains Okay, 10 minutes. Okay, so that was before. I was talking about external API. They use EurekaPI, something that for I have an IP, I want to know where it's coming from. So this was stored on Amazon server somewhere. It's almost a free services or a very low plan. And at the end, 100 to 40 milliseconds was waiting for that. We use a GeoLite, which is a quite cool PHP module. You can use as a C module. And natively, it's answered the same thing in 1 millisecond and even less. So you can do thousands of, oh, where is this IP? And we will send you back the city or the country. And then give me also the city and the geographical information, which continent, which city, and things like this. They were using Elasticsearch for that on the same data set. By using direct SQL queries with GIS, we were able to move from 300 milliseconds to 1 millisecond. So it's good to do. The database sometimes is efficient. How do we manage our replication and databases? We use Replication Manager. So Replication Manager is a Go product. You install it, you give the configuration of your server, user password and host. So as you can see, there is fronts for each web server and my two candidates. So you can see the front here means that the failover will only go to those servers. The switchover will only go to those servers. Okay, nothing fuzzy here. And we also use our configurator, I told you, for the init container. The way it works like this, you add a memory or you add the disk, you add some big features of MySQL or MariaDB. So you can add multi-domain, MySQL GTID if you're using MySQL, SSL, Connect Storage Engine, OQGraph, everything is managed. Compressed bin logs if you're using MariaDB. Based on that, it will generate you the good configuration to use by including symlinks. So basically, there's a lot of symlinks based on what you choose here. That's years of consulting inside the product. ProxySQL is a good, interesting part, because when you're multi-data center, then you have some very specific things. So we do read-write splitting, so all the selects will go to the local slave. To do that, we wait the local slave. So by default, if this is the ProxySQL configuration of front 3, which is in Canada, I think, yeah. In Canada, it will preferably go here. And of course, then the two others are the two master candidates. If there is two front, DB front in the same, like in US, there is two possible front. I would have my two fronts here, but one would be preferred, the one where the web server is running. Like this, always sure to get local service, but if I stop one proxy, or I stop one slave, sorry, then it can still route to another slave in the same data center. Even if the weight is not 1000, but because it's the only one to be able to read, then it's fine. Okay, so now we have a problem because this setup is not using Galera, it's using asynchronous master slave. I don't show you, but it's not using only asynchronous, it's also using semi-synchronous. Anyway, in same data, only in US. Semi-synchronous is only based on the data center in US. But anyway, what's the idea here is that sometimes WordPress is doing a write on an object, and then all the plugins do that. Select a star from the object that he has created, limit 1 with the ID of the object. So it's a read after a write. And of course, if I split the read to my local slave, maybe the replication did not catch the write. So to do that, we use a trick, which is called master GTID wait. Master GTID wait is a function. So this is sent by ProxySQL to the master. So from here, I get the GTID position of the replication on the master. And from that, I say, wait for this ID to come in the slave. And if it times out, it returns -1. It means that digitID is not passing after a certain timeout. So that's the famous timeout here, value. So here it's set up about 2 seconds or something like this. So after 2 seconds, it will fail over and run the query with a trick. Did I put the trick somewhere? Maybe in the next slide? No. Well, I have a trick when I put some command in the query, and then the ProxySQL will route that to the master. So you see mixer master, and then if you see that, it routes the query to the master. So if it fails reading the slave, it means the slave have a delay or is late. It goes to the master. But we are very optimistic, means that every select by default is not a critical reads. So I ask the developer to go into the critical reads and to add this function everywhere. Most of the time, it's more reads than write. So, so we are optimistic, and we found exactly where is the point of problem. Most of the time, is when you do an update on your post or whatever, it's okay, it's fine. So what the conclusion is, we get a fixed cost infrastructure for this client, 6 nodes. He's paying less than 3,000 euros per month. We do the administration of the servers, everything, so in Cloud 18. You can do it yourself, but we offer to do that, and that's the way we get money. No share server with other. If you're using Amazon or Google Cloud, you never know what your bandwidth is, how it can perform. Amazon, it's a nightmare. Sometimes, some days it's fast, some days it's not. You don't know really why. It's because everything is shared. At OVH, at least, it's a real data center. The servers are physical servers. They are not virtual machines. They go with robots, and they push they rack the servers. So it's your servers, and it's my client servers. It's not mine. I just administrate them, and that's all. GeoDNS to each zone, so that's good. It's embedding a best practice on MySQL MariaDB if you use our Cloud 18 services. No loss of sysops knowledge means that because of OpenSVC and Docker, installing MariaDB or installing ProxySQL, the knowledge is there. I can unprovision, reprovision the service. It's not lost. With VMware, someone, the sysops, have installed this and has made the configuration for the database, and then maybe it's not there, and you just stop. It's not the case with such type of architecture. So we have seen that the stack can be secured. Resources services, if you add more server or change the server, you get more powerful servers. You can easily do that. And no virtualization extra cost, because VMware or whatever you're using, Elixir or whatever, still have a virtualization cost. With Docker, that's the point. With container, you're sharing the same kernel. It's the same price as not using containers. And again, enjoying dynamic change, RPC routing and secret means that if I change, for example, I add a new DNS, I add it in the service, and it's no restart, no nothing. It's already pushed into the Envoy proxy. Same thing for if I change a certificate or a secret, it's already there. And this is conclusion of my talk. I hope you enjoy it. We have time for questions. If yeah.
Just one question. Why you don't put the proxy on the slave on the MySQL slave directly?
Yeah, it is. There is one proxy per slave.
Because I think it was a different server.
No. Only on pre-production and development, there is only one. There's a limited number of ProxySQL. And also, in each data center, you have 2 Envoy. It's in a failover. It's a failover situation, which I would say that OVH VRAC in this case is better, because failover IP on VRAC out of VRAC is a pure nightmare. You don't know when it will happen. So with Verac situation, you can buy a public block of IPs, and then you manage the route yourself. OpenSVC is really easy to configure for that. So it would avoid this failover situation. But nowadays, it doesn't work like this. We have one IP, and we move it against a different OVH server for each data center. But it's not a big deal, because if one data center is down, then the DNS server will just say, okay, I move to France, or I move to. So there is some settings. Maybe a quick last question. No question. Perfect. So we can conclude and have a coffee break. Thank you very much.